Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning on why is technology skills training critical to youth now. My name's Fiona McCauley, and I'll be facilitating this webinar from Making Sense International. The goals of our webinar are to learn what motivates one of the world's largest technology companies to invest in technology skills training and how they map their global workforce development investments. Second, to learn how leading technology skills training organizations are considering trade-offs between scale, customization, and cost. And third, this webinar will give you the opportunity to learn how the framework and mapping tool work, with the goal of you being able to use it internally and to share it with other partners and collaborators externally in order to build a common framework and understanding about how we're talking about different actors on the technology skills training landscape. We really appreciate having two presenters with us today, Yvonne and Salvatore. Can I ask you, Yvonne, to please introduce yourself?
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. My name is Yvonne Thomas, and I lead Microsoft's Youth Spark initiative, which we will share a little bit more about today. I'm excited to talk with you about work that we've done together with Making Sense and the opportunities that we have to use these tools and frameworks to further collaborate and bring more to young people around the world.
Thank you, Yvonne. Salvatore?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Salvatore Nigro. I'm the CEO of Education for Employment in Europe. I'm Italian, I'm based in Spain, and I work worldwide to provide job opportunities for young people.
Great, thank you very much, Salvatore. So understanding the technology skills training landscape, why is it critical for us to be talking about technology skills training for youth? Why is that critical at the moment? This can be summed up as new skills for new jobs. As the economy becomes more dependent on digital technology, more and more jobs are becoming what we call digital jobs, in which ICT is being applied to a new or existing activity or process. Digitization may modify an existing, for example, when a clerk who used to process paper invoices now must become a technician processing online transactions at a computer workstation on another continent. Or it may create a wholly new type of job, such as mobile application developer, geospatial analyst, or cloud architect. And what these jobs have in common is that they're enabled by ICT infrastructure, including computers, tablets, smartphones, and internet connectivity. And a significant element of the value added in this work is in creating, manipulating, and sharing information rather than physical products. So as we consider these statistics in front of us, we see that there is demand for these technology skills that enable people to do digital jobs. And we also are familiar with the very high unemployment rates, especially for young people around the world. What is the opportunity for us to ensure that young people have the technology skills that will enable them to fill the unfilled jobs out there? Salvatore, in the markets that you're working in, can you share some information about what's taking place in those markets around both youth unemployment as well as around the kinds of jobs that employers are looking to have filled?
Sure. Well, we are experiencing a huge skills mismatch about the high youth unemployment rate from one side that is doubling the general unemployment rate in each one of the countries where we operate. The Education for Employment mainly works in the Middle East and North Africa, but is also expanding some programs in Latin America, South Africa, and in Spain. And youth unemployment is actually doubles, if not triple, the unemployment rate of adults. Young people have been those most affected by the economic crisis worldwide. But on the other side, we are experiencing more and more companies that are looking for talented young people, especially in digital jobs, which is not only in the digital sector, but are digital jobs that can be applied into different sectors, that they cannot really find. And this is because mainly the public educational system are still utilizing curricula that are absolutely outdated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Yvonne, what is the technology sector's view on this information about the demand for technology literate workers?
Our perspective is definitely that there is continued opportunity for young people to gain the skills that employers are looking for, whether it's in the technology sector or in other sectors. And it definitely takes more work in collaboration at all levels, whether that's at the education level, the out of school time, or for those young people who may be in neither situation but need to gain those important skills that they need for success, not only in work but in life. So we definitely see opportunity to continue the hard work that's already happening and see where we can find great practices that are already working and bring them to more areas, or look at ways to learn from those great practices and make sure that more young people can benefit from them.
Okay, thank you very much. And against this landscape, Yvonne, can you please share some information about why Microsoft commissioned Making Sense to develop the Understanding the Technology Skills Training Landscape framework and tool? What were Microsoft's drivers for this?
Absolutely, thank you, Fiona. About 2 years ago, Microsoft launched an initiative called Youth Spark. After taking a look at some of the significant issues that were facing young people globally, the significant challenges that were becoming even more significant because of the financial crisis, and decided that there was more that Microsoft could do to help young people gain the skills and get the resources that they need to be successful, not only in work, but as they think about starting or growing small businesses, or as they look to continue their education or training. And harnessed not only the philanthropic resources of Microsoft, but also resources across the business to bring to bear on this issue through this program called Youth Spark. And about a year into the process, we realized that there was more information that we could use, and we're also seeing from our partners on the ground more opportunity to bring a consistent set of language and definitions to these really challenging issues facing young people and employers and trainers and all of our partners as they try to sort through what are the skills that young people need, what are the kinds of things that organizations who train young people need, how do they better understand employer demands around skills needs or skills training, and how do you bring all of those pieces together to make sure that young person really can be successful in the ways that make the most sense. So we worked with Making Sense to develop this framework and tool to try to bring all of those pieces together for both the work that Microsoft is doing and also to try to find more synergies across what's happening in a local market and be able to create partnerships leveraging the strengths of all organizations in a local market. So again, a couple of reasons we developed it with Making Sense were to make sure that not only we, but our partners could really understand what was happening in a local market, to better understand ways to partner and make sure that in whatever way an organization is working, its strengths can be leveraged and brought together with other organizations who help create a potential pipeline of training and opportunity for a young person. Also to highlight the role that technology skills training does play for young people and for employment, the importance that technology skills brings, knowing as a technology company that the more proficiency a young person has in technology skills, the more opportunities are going to be open to them as you think about employment and entrepreneurship. And really to create a way to have a common conversation around a very complex issue of workforce development at a local level and at a global level. And then have tools and frameworks that can be applied very practically for people working in these complex settings on the ground, having things that can actually be really useful in a day-to-day setting with other partners, with funders, with employers to really better define what is happening in a local and then be able to apply specific tools to help you leverage those great resources that exist.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Well, we appreciate having 50 people join us, about 15 different countries around the world. And I'd like to let you all know that after we hear a bit more, and a bit more from Yvonne and Salvatore, you will also have a chance to have your questions answered. So you're welcome to enter your questions in the chat box that you see at the lower left corner of your screen. And we'll keep an eye on those as we go through. And all three of us presenting will seek to answer those questions as we go or answer them at the end. So what we're going to do now is dive into the framework and tool. We will put up the URL at which you can download the framework and tool at no cost, and you'll also see that on the screen at the end of this presentation. And for the next few minutes, we're going to offer you an opportunity, kind of an orientation to the framework and tool to equip you to be able to use it within your organizations, and also for you to consider how you might use this tool externally as you seek to work even more efficiently and effective with other partners who are involved in delivering technology skills training or placement of young people in digital jobs, as well as with funders, donors, and others, who form part of your network. So the first slide that you see here in front of you shows you how the tool works. And there are three different categories that are, clicking ahead, three different categories that are used to classify any technology skills training program. And I'll also mention that these, while we're going to be seeing on this webinar specifically as to how to use this framework and tool in order to map a technology skills training program, in fact, the framework can be used for any workforce development program. The tool is agnostic in that it doesn't judge whether one program is better than another. It merely offers a framework against which any technology skills or, as I mentioned, workforce development training program can be mapped again. So the first criteria that is offered in the framework, the first of three, is the primary training objective. And within primary training objective, there are three different classifications. So is a program focused on work readiness, meaning in this, where we see this pink block and pink words at the bottom, is its primary training objective preparing a young person for future employment or self-employment? The characteristics of this kind of program would be offering basic job-related technical skills and workforce behaviors. In the realm of entrepreneurship, it might be offering general entrepreneurship concepts and thinking, career information, perhaps mentoring. And while not always, these kinds of work readiness programs may be targeting school-aged youth. As we move up, the next category is job entry. So is a technology skills training program focused on job entry, helping a young person move into the world of employment? And the kinds of characteristics that we see in job entry program are skills and behaviors linked to a specific job, sector, or employer. The kinds of key activities include internships or co-op placements, placement and often post-placement assistance, and typically a target for a program that is doing job entry would be a young unemployed job seeker. And the third category, the third classification is career advancement. So is the primary training objective of a technology skills training program career advancement? So this would be for someone who is already in the workforce and looking to move ahead with their current employer or to move into a more challenging position to advance in their career. It could also mean going back and getting additional education. So the kinds of characteristics of these programs would be the development of complex skills that lead to better employment or business growth, continuing education, skill-specific training, mentoring, and the target audience may be an employed or self-employed young person. So training objective is the first category that the framework introduces. So let's see how the tool portion of the framework would be applied. The goal here is that it is to offer a tool that makes it straightforward for a program to map itself or to map another organization it may be considering partnering with, or any other organization in its ecosystem. So here we see what the categories are. We move to this next stage of the tool where a flowchart is offered in order to help identify which classification this program would fall into. So we're going to take the example of Anudip. Anudip operates in West Bengal, India, and it provides ICT and business skills development to poor rural youth and transitions its graduates into technology-enabled employment. So if we look at how we might map Anudip against the framework, the first question is the target youth unemployed or underemployed? Oh, is the target youth unemployed or underemployed? And the answer is yes, because they are working with unemployed youth. That brings us down to the question, is the skills training specific to a job role? And in this example, the answer is yes. The program is offering job placement assistance into a specific job role. And therefore, they would be, going back to our framework, they would be a program that's focused on job entry. So while they are doing some work readiness work in order to prepare that young person for job entry, their primary training objective is job entry. So we start to see how it's useful for us to be able to categorize different programs so that we can understand, for example, if my program is involved in work readiness, how it would be useful to have links with the programs involved in job entry so that there could be a more seamless transition or referral system between a job readiness and a job entry program. So that's the first classification. We're now going to move on to the next one. The next one is around market alignment. So for a program to be market aligned to any degree is already an excellent characteristic of that program. And then what we're then looking to see is that the degree to which a program is market aligned. And for those of you participating who are involved in programming, you'll recognize that this whole discussion around market alignment is very closely linked to this discussion on trade-offs, which we're going to get to next. So let me first present to you this category of market alignment. In this blue outer circle is what is termed demand-aware. A demand-aware technology skills training program prepares youth with skills across sectors. The way that a training organization might understand what the demand is from employers could be doing desk research, as well as engaging with employers, for example, through focus groups and by having an advisory board. So a demand-aware technology skills training program is engaging with employers and developing digital job skills that fall into the category of general employability skills. The next circle, the pink one, is termed demand-aligned. So this category is for programs that are developing industry or sector-specific skills. They have significant employer engagement and will often do customized training. So because they are preparing youth for employment or self-employment in a specific industry sector, it means that the training program has understanding about what the needs are of future workers in that specific industry sector. So for example, this could be in the healthcare sector, could be in financial services, it could be in a specific part of an agricultural value chain. So this training is now having a more narrow focus on preparing young people for a specific industry sector. The inner circle, the green one, is categorized as being demand-driven, which is job-specific skills. So we're getting even narrower here, where a demand-driven technology skills training program would be focused on a specific job role for a specific employer or group of employers. So it follows that the training modules would be highly customized, and in order to be able to develop these highly customized training modules for a specific job role or specific employer, there would be a very close partnership with employers who are involved in co-designing or co-delivering the training. We'll now move on to looking at taking this framework, taking this category of market alignment into account. Let's move on and look at the tool that is provided in order to assess which of these categories a training skills program falls into. So our example here is the Microsoft Partner Apprenticeship Program based in the United Kingdom. In this program, Microsoft collaborates with ICT sector companies within its supply chain training providers, and the UK government to train and certify apprentices aged 16 to 24 for various job roles. So when we talk about companies within its supply chain, as you can imagine, there's hundreds of different companies that are providing services to Microsoft. And Microsoft works closely with them, with these different companies with whom they do business, and asking them questions, surveying them, working closely with them in order to understand what are the kinds of skills that those other businesses are looking for, and what are the kinds of certifications that they need in the young people who they're seeking to bring in as new employees. And then Microsoft works with the training providers to ensure that young people are receiving those kinds of skills and certifications that are needed to serve the demand within the UK market for technology skills. So if we take a look now on the right side of the tool, our first question is, if we consider this example, is the skills training content focused on employment? Yes, it is focused on employment because the goal of the training of the apprentices is to have them move into jobs and succeed in those jobs. Is the industry sector specific demand for skills? Yes, it's sector specific because it's focused within the ICT sector and this group of companies serving Microsoft. So we see that these programs are aligned. They are market aligned. So going back to the previous slide, in terms of how, where we looked at these different definitions of market alignment, we can see that the Microsoft UK Apprenticeship Program is market aligned because it's preparing young people to work in a specific industry, but it's not, for example, demand driven because it's not only focused on one specific job role or only focused on preparing apprentices for one specific employer. So this would be a demand aligned program based on the definitions that are offered in this framework. And finally, our third category, which is looking at success measures. Output, outcome, and impact. So as many of you are familiar with, outputs are linked to what the program does rather than the results from it. So for example, measuring the number of youth recruited or trained. Outcome linked to the immediate difference that a program generates. So for example, the number of young people coming out of a program that attain a job-related credential, and impact looking at the longer-term benefits that a program generates. So for example, youth admitted into further education or placed into a new job who still hold that position or another position after 1 year. We move on to the tool for this category. YCAB Foundation based in Indonesia offers us a good example about a program that measures outputs. So for example, they measure the number of students that they train per year. They measure the outcome, meaning the % of those students that are graduating. And then they also measure their impact in that they measure the number of graduates that are placed into specific internships with companies and how many of those interns then secure full-time jobs. There's many different ways that many different kinds of outputs, outcomes, and impacts that can be measured. So we offer an example here. Okay, I'm going to take a look over at the some questions. Okay, explain. So from KK, we have explained demand-driven versus demand-aligned. Now that I've gone through that explanation, is that still a question for yourself and any others out there who want more information? Okay, that's clear. So, thanks for letting me know. I am just going to make one mention, is that as we all know from our work in the workforce development sector, that the use of demand-driven is a term that is used a lot, right? We hear a lot of programs being talked about being demand-driven and asked if they're demand-driven. And so for the purpose of this framework and tool, we have offered this definition of demand-driven. And as Yvonne said at the beginning of the webinar, one of our goals for this framework is to offer a common language between programs. And we would suggest that it would be more advantageous to our development as an effective workforce development ecosystem of actors if we were using tighter definitions when we speak about whether our degree of market alignment. So this framework is offering the that's quite a specific definition that we're offering for demand driven, and so that we aren't bucketing too many programs into demand-driven, which actually have a high degree of different market alignment. We offer that our sector can begin to use terms such as demand-aware, demand-aligned, and demand-driven to differentiate the degree to which programs are focused on specific job roles or preparing young people for specific employers. You know, that along that spectrum of developing young people for skills across sectors. You know, right up to that other end of the spectrum of focusing on specific jobs or specific employers. And I'm going to re-mention again that the framework is agnostic. It doesn't suggest that it's better, according to these definitions, to be demand aware or demand driven, or that it's best to be demand aligned, but rather acknowledges that there is a spectrum along which a program can be market aligned, and there are trade-offs in choosing one degree of market alignment against another, for example. And one of the things we want to do on this webinar is have a very frank discussion about that. So with that, I'd actually like to transition over now to Salvatore and talk with and ask you, Salvatore, if you can share with us the kind of experience that EFE has on making some of these trade-offs. And before you jump into that, if you could give us some quick overview of your program using the kinds of categories that we've just used as a sector as we begin to practice how to articulate the work that we're doing using this kind of framework. Let me move this ahead for you here. Okay, over to you, Salvatore.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, let me thank you. Let me thank Making Sense, and let me thank Microsoft for having made this analysis and this framework. It is very important because youth employment and youth unemployment has led different organizations today to jump into training programs that sometimes are demand driven, sometimes are demand aligned, and sometimes are demand aware programs. And this has generated a lot of confusion in the past few years. So this effort of clarity, it is very much fundamental. EFE, Education for Employment, the organization that I represent, is focused mainly on demand-driven programs and mainly on programs that are impacts related rather than output related. However, we do a little bit of the two. And we do a little bit of the two because we realize that, first of all, there is a need of preparing the young people that are getting out of the formal educational system for skills across sectors and in the digital space across different technology. And for this, as you can see, we have output focused programs. One of them is called Finding a Job is a Job, or an IT digital literacy program that prepares young people from basic soft skills on how to find a job, on how to define their strength, on how to define their weaknesses when they present themselves to an employer. To more impact focused programs over which we placed into jobs that were identified more than 7,000 people across 6 different countries in the Middle East and North Africa. Now, those are not only IT jobs, but there are also land surveyors, air conditioning repair, from sales to MBA, from the banking to the jewelry industry. This really, because of the fact that it's demand driven, it goes across sector and it really responds not only to the demand of a sector, but also to the demand of a specific employer. For what it concerns these presentations, we're talking about the IT skills. I wanted to highlight one of our programs called Programming for the Future that we have been launching together with one partner, which is the Accenture, as you might know, the global management consulting BPO and technology company. in which it's a program that is a job entry program, following your definition, is a demand-driven program, and is an impact-focused program, because not only we were looking at the how many people you train, but actually how many people you place into jobs, and also on how you follow up with them once you've placed them into job, and how you provide continuous support. So everything starts from the employers. Everything starts in identifying the hiring needs. So in the countries we have where we have been launching these projects, which are Morocco, Spain, Argentina, Brazil, and South Africa, together with local delivery partners, we made a sector analysis of the IT jobs. I'm going to focus, for the sake of time, just on one country at this moment, which is Morocco, but this has been replicated in 4 additional countries. So we identified the hiring needs by making a sector analysis. In the sector analysis, and by talking with employers, we identified Java and Microsoft.NET as a need in the market. We recruited young people through different channels, but at the same time and in parallel, we worked with companies to make sure that the companies can then employ the young people. So as I said, let me focus on the Morocco experience, in which we moved from a demand-aligned program to a demand-driven program. So the first steps were at the demand-aligned, and before that, following the definition, we can say that we made a demand-awareness program. So we identified IT as a growing sector in the countries. And in the IT sector, together with Accenture, we defined what were the job positions that were available and that were unfilled. We did that by looking at the data that was provided obviously by the Ministry of Employment, by the Ministry of Technology, but also we made a series of interviews with national employment agencies, the ANAPEC, which is the National Employment Agency in Morocco, and in which not only we looked at the national data, but we tried to disaggregate the data according to the different cities in which we were going to operate. And to move from a demand-aligned to a demand-driven program, we needed to select those cities in Morocco where there was a high unemployment, but also there was a high growth in the IT sector in which companies were recruiting. So we focused on the city of Casablanca. After that, together with our partners of Accenture, what we did is we monitored 58 job portals over 3 months. This has been a very interesting work that helped us in defining what are the jobs that are available out there, and we should concentrate our attention and we should concentrate our efforts. Okay. At that point, we organized a series of roundtable with the different federations, umbrella organizations in the IT and BPO sector. This is one of the APB is the National Associations for IT. And we screened 24 companies, some of them that were members of the APB, to sit really with the Director of Human Resources. At that point, you can really say we started to be demand-driven. You sit with the Director of Human Resources, you engage those companies. Initially, they came up with a long list of skills that these young people need to have. So also what you want to do is, what are the skills that the young people need to have? What are the skills that in a short term the young people can learn? So we screened those kind of skills, and we concluded that in Morocco, there was a high need of programmers in Java and programmers in Microsoft.NET. At that point, and only at that point, we developed the Java and the Microsoft.NET curricula. in which we added also soft skills, and we added also business language. Why? Because the companies have told us that it's not only, there was not only a need of technical skills, but there was a need of soft skills, people who were able to work in a team, because normally IT projects are made together with different people in a project team. People who were also trained in respect deadlines. People who were also trained in communicate effectively, because they needed to present the projects that they were developing, but also people who had to have a good business language terminology. Talking about Morocco, so it was important to include some business French courses inside the training. But we also engaged because certification was important. So we did certified these people in Microsoft.NET, thanks also to Microsoft, who provided the free certifications, the certification at no cost for our beneficiaries. And we are talking mainly about people who are coming from a low to middle socioeconomic background in the country. So in Morocco, we were able to train 50 young people in Microsoft.NET and in Java, and to place 39 people in sustainable jobs. This was because there was commitment, a real commitment from the companies who were involved from day zero, from the project design to the internship that these people have done into the company, to assigning a mentor inside the company to follow up what is their career path and their career advancement during the company. Now, the program has also been replicated as a pilot in other 5 countries, as I said, in which we had a good 80% of placement. And this is also due because we had a strong partner that was actually Accenture in the different countries where we operate. As I said, this is just a pilot intervention on IT. But the most important thing is about the cost of the program and the return of the program. The program, obviously, we are talking about people who have to become programmers. This means a deep intervention, courses of from 300 to 500 hours of training, plus selection, plus placement. So the cost of the project was $840,000. But what is the economic return? We're talking about more than 4 million that those beneficiaries are going to generate in 3 years due to their aggregate salary. So people who have no jobs or coming from a low economic background, they become programmers, and this is a sustainable jobs. So the aggregate salary of all of them is more than $4 million over 3 years that they will share with their family, that they will share with the community in which they operate. As said, I see that there are some questions, but maybe Fiona, we can leave it for the question and answer time.
That would be great. Salvatore, let's, before we take some additional questions from the audience, could you talk about this question of trade-offs? So EFE in your programming is, in our discussions, we've talked about how decisions are being made all the time about the scale of the reach, the depth of support for an individual participant, the cost of reaching that participant. How does EFE see these trade-offs? And then Yvonne, would love to swing over to you to hear how Microsoft, with your donor funder hat on, how you look at those trade-offs as well.
Yeah, it's a matter of balance, especially an NGO like EFE works with multiple donors, and there are donors who are more interested into light touch programs that are more demand aligned, simple training courses of 20 hours in which you are not really going very much in deep in changing someone's lives, and these are training programs. But what we are most interested to are employment programs. the way you are monitoring and evaluating your programs according to how many people you place into sustainable jobs. And obviously this requires a much, much deeper intervention in terms of selecting the young people, in terms of screening them, because you do not want to invest in skills that are not necessary or that that person already possesses. So there is a previous screening of these young people to see what are their weaknesses and what kind of skills you have to improve during the training and the way you have to place. Now, why is this costly? The cost is not only related to the training. The cost is related to the full process. If I compare this to any company, the training part is actually the production department. But the sourcing and the placement are very much related to the research and development and all the marketing that you have to make afterwards and the selling that you have to make of your products. In this case, you are producing a good employee, you are transforming a young people, the raw material, you are transforming into a skilled, talented person, but then you have to place it. And placing requires that you create a good engagement with the companies, which is also costly. Why a company should just deal with an NGO to do so? They might go and hire any kind of recruitment agency to do so and pay for the top-notch students coming from private universities. But this is going to be costly for the companies from one side, and on the other side is not providing opportunities to the talented young people who did not have opportunities in life. So the role of NGOs like ours is to transform these talented people into a productive employee for the company.
Salvatore, we have a question from Mike Tettleman, who's on the webinar. He asked, does it get harder to do this work of work readiness and job placement if you're looking at thousands of people or many thousands of people? What is EFE's experience with taking to scale, so moving from the hundreds to the thousands? How do you look at that question that's being asked?
Thank you. Well, we already are into the thousands. I mean, we have already placed more than 7,000 people into jobs, and we are doubling our number every year. Now, obviously, what we're going to apply now is from a push strategy, a pull strategy. What does that mean? If until now we are going by one to knock at the door of employers in each one of the respective countries, to actually sell our products, to make sure that there was a need from their side in terms of recruiting needs and hiring from our pool of youth, from the people that we will source and train for them. The more we are becoming known in each one of the different countries, the more we are experiencing that the companies are coming to us. And the other issues that we are doing now is creating a sort of a consortium approach according to the sector, in which we are creating a talent pipeline for companies. Until we also do not change the perception of companies that today are stealing talents one to another, but that they need to collaborate and work together for a specific training programs and create a pool of candidates of which they can actually hire, that they will have more benefits about it. If you think this small project that was programming for the future, I mean, we're talking about 140 people. These 140 people were placed in 58 companies. These 58 companies, they were competing in the same market, but they did realize that if they work together as a consortium, they could have the talent they needed. But if you need to hire just 3 people, it is not worth it for you to invest into the sourcing, into the training, into the placement.
Okay, thank you very much. Yvonne, how does Microsoft consider these trade-offs around depth reach, depth of touch with one individual versus broader reach, and the kind of return on investment that you see for those dollars invested in a smaller number of individuals or a lighter touch with a larger number of young people?
It's a very good question, and one we are constantly working on. I think part of the reason we created this framework is because we understand that all approaches are needed in any market. You need approaches that are going to reach a broad number of people with foundational level of skills that they can then build on. You need approaches that will help people get the depth of skills or training or expertise that an employer may need for a specific sector or a specific job. And we not only understand that, we also fund both depth and breadth work through what we do in YouthSpark. We have organizations we work with that reach young people across the country by the millions, and we also have programs that reach smaller numbers but in very deep ways. So we really look at and understand that the need is for both. And our hope with the work that we're doing through YouthSpark and through resources like this framework is that that we try to answer that question of so what. That the training is not just for the sake of training, but that it has an end in mind, even if that end is down the road, so that those young people are getting skills that they need for either employment or for starting or growing their own businesses in their local markets. And that whatever training they get, it does have an application that gets them closer to whatever they may want to do for their life, not just the training for the sake of training. So we sort of look at all of those pieces and hope that this framework helps the organizations that we work with, but also helps the sectors more broadly think about what are those skills, what are the range of skills that a young person needs to get into employment or start or grow businesses, and what are the many steps along the way those skills need to be applied, and how do you have conversations to make sure that young person has a pathway, and that there are multiple places that they can go to build that depth of skills that they eventually need to be very successful for their futures.
Right, well, thank you very much.
And Fiona, if I can just add on the trade-off, sometimes it's a trade-off, sometimes it's a complementarity of the two programs. Normally, to get to 100 people into jobs, you need maybe to train 120, 140, but also you need to reach maybe 300 and 400 people to screen them for that training. So the first one can definitely help you, and I think you make this point, and I want to underline that if you know who is doing the demand aligned or the demand awareness programs, and you create a partnership with them, you can leverage the amount of candidates that they've been already training, the amount of candidates that they have been already screening for your demand-driven programs. So sometimes it's a trade-off, but sometimes by knowing who in a particular country is doing what, it is much easier and you have to spend much less because you have just to intervene in one piece of the chain.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Salvatore. Thank you for sharing that. And it's an excellent transition to some of the ways that we believe that the landscape framework and tool have the possibility of being used, and promoting these kinds of partnerships and referral programs and having is really one of the main goals of the framework. As Yvonne mentioned, to build a common language, and that internally that organizations have the opportunity to map their work and to promote consistent use of a view of a program, even amongst the members of the same organization, to really, help build internal understanding about the primary, training goal of a program, and to build understanding about where a program strengths are and where it picks up and where it leaves off, obviously leading to the opportunity of using the tool to be able to promote that kind of conversation with other programs that may be feeder programs, or building on the skills that a trainee may have coming out of your own program, and looking to move forward through more advanced skills or other opportunities that a program may offer when our own programs lead off. Yvonne, is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation about how Microsoft it hopes that organizations will be able to make use of the framework?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think this is a really good conversation. I think that that it's been clearly identified that there are lots of complements, lots of opportunities for organizations to leverage this and really look at how how you do really map the work of your organization partners, your own ecosystem, and look at where there are really complementary opportunities to bring best practices together. And I think really looking at how that ecosystem can be strengthened for the goal that we're all working for, which is making sure young people have what they need, and really looking at all of the players in that ecosystem and making sure you understand what role each one plays, identifying where the gaps are or where the synergies are, and helping to strengthen. And I think that there are lots of opportunities to continue to do that, lots of great resources out there, and we hope that this tool and framework can be really a resource to continue that conversation, so that more can be done for more young people and really look to help improve the situations that are existing around the world.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from the audience about who's using the framework at the moment. In response to that, this framework has just been launched, and we're using this webinar and 2 other webinars to offer over the next 24 hours or so to offer this webinar to people in different time zones. That said, the internal teams at Microsoft have begun to make use of the information already. And Yvonne, could you speak a little bit more to that, about the usefulness that your colleagues within Microsoft have had from the framework, since they've had access to it for a little bit longer than our external audience?
Absolutely. As I mentioned at the outset of this, our team, part of the reason for developing this tool and frameworks was for Microsoft's teams who work with our nonprofit organizations in country at a local level and who are not at field. We wanted to make sure that they had some tools that they could easily leverage in their local markets to better understand what was happening, better see where the synergies are, and even if we don't have resources to contribute in terms of cash, we could just help better connect people and better connect the dots to what might be happening locally. And many of our teams who work across regions such as Latin America, or work across countries such as Japan, have already used this to map out the work that they're doing, map out partners that we're working with, map out where government resources exist, and identified gaps where there may be places where Microsoft could play a different role, or where we could figure out how to bring partners together to solve a particular issue where there may be a gap or where there may be too much overlap, for example. So our own teams who are working on the ground have already started to use this and will be then working with our partners as well, our NGO partners, and with governments that they work with, to just, again, use this as a tool to have a conversation and continue to strengthen how the systems are working together locally.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So I know that we have a number of members in the audience who are looking for tools like this and others that they can just pick up and use. Are there other resources that Microsoft has freely available you can share with us?
Yes, definitely. So as part of what we do through YouthSpark, I mentioned that there are not only Microsoft's philanthropic resources, but there are a number of programs that our business operates that are focused on helping young people get skills. And as a technology company, you can safely assume that there are a lot of resources in technology skills and leveraging technology to help a young person, whether they are looking to move into a formal job or start or grow their own business. So there's one website that you can find all of these resources at, which is our YouthSpark Hub. The easy address to remember is youthsparkhub.com, to find these 30 programs plus information about the ways that you as a grown or an adult can leverage them, and resources that are not only specific for a young person, but all people who care about young people, whether that's a teacher, a parent, someone who's working at an NGO and working with young people. All of the things that you can leverage, most of them are at no cost, to help that young person that you're working with build skills, build connections, build networks, leverage technology, and really help them get what they need to be successful as they think about what they want their own futures to look like. So in addition to this framework, there's a lot of other tools and resources that you can take advantage of.
Okay, great, excellent. Thank you so much, Yvonne. So that concludes the webinar. A couple of follow-up notes is that as soon as the webinar ends, you will be requested to do an evaluation of the webinar. Thank you for taking a moment to do that. We take all of your feedback very seriously. For everyone who registered for this webinar, you will be receiving both a link to the framework document if you haven't already downloaded it, as well as a link to the recording of this webinar if you would like to share the contents of it with colleagues or other partners. Salvatore, I note that there is a lot of interest in your program, and I think some members of our audience would be interested in learning more. So we will invite you to also include a link in the follow-up email so that audience members who want to know more about that EFE program or others can access that information as well. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.